So friends, you have the text there.
Yeah.
Dinah, the daughter of Leah, whom she had born to Yaakov, went out to look about among the daughters of the land. Rashi's commentary in the box below. So the pasuk, the verse says, the daughter of Leah. Rashi asks, and not the daughter of Yaakov? Why the separation here? Daughter of Leah, whom she had born to Yaakov, just say, daughter of Leah and Yaakov. Why is the Torah associating her specifically with her mother, not with her mother and father? Rashi answers, the Torah means to tell us, however, because of her going out, she was called the daughter of Leah. Since she, Leah too, was in the habit of going out. As it is said, we learned in the previous Parshat, and Leah came forth toward him. That's towards her husband Yaakov. Then Rashi adds, and concerning her, they devised the proverb, like mother, like daughter. Now, when you read this commentary of Rashi superficially, just read it, it's pretty clear that this is a criticism, but so it appears. Because if you read further, what happens is a terrible story. And Shechem, the son of Hamor, the Hittite, the prince of the land, saw her, and he took her, lay with her, and violated her. So the result of her going out to see the daughters of the land was a terrible consequence. And you know the rest of the story. He wants to marry her. And the brothers say, sure, but you got to be circumcised. You and your entire tribe, which they do. And the two brothers, Shimon and Levi, on the third day of the circumcision, they wipe them out. So it's not a pretty story by any stretch, one would say. And that's the story. That's what Rashi is saying. She went out. She shouldn't have. She should have stayed nicely at home. This whole thing wouldn't have happened. It seems to be a criticism. However, friends, as we probe deeper, we're going to see now that not only is it not a criticism, in fact, it's an extraordinary praise. And let's begin our journey. First of all, the comparison to her mother and Leah went out. Let's look at the context over there. I don't have the text in front of you here, but Leah went out. Our sages praise her for that. She went out to greet Yaakov because she wanted to have more and more tribes. She's not criticized for going out to greet Yaakov. So right there, we have a clue that we need to understand this and revisit our initial perception. Because like mother, like daughter, well, what did the mother do that was so terrible? Nothing. In fact, something praiseworthy. She desired to have as many children as God would possibly grant her. So she went out to greet her husband, as described there in the Torah, the whole context of the story. And she's not criticized, she's praised. Clearly, therefore, Dinah's going out is something virtuous. Well, what exactly is the virtue? And moreover, the consequences don't seem to be positive. So we need to revisit the whole story a little bit deeper. And to do that, let's understand who Leah is and Rachel. So the next verse that you have on your that I sent you is from last week's Parshat. And the story there, that's the first time we're introduced to Rachel and Leah. And this is what the Torah has to say about the two sisters. Now, Lavan had two daughters. The name of the elder was Leah. The name of the younger was Rachel. Leah's eyes were tender, literally soft. But, it doesn't say but really in the verse, but the translator puts the but in. The verse really contrasts. And Rachel had beautiful features and a beautiful complexion. Let's look at Rashi's commentary and then we'll go deeper. What does it mean that Leah's eyes were tender? Because she expected to fall into Esau's lot, and she wept. Because everyone was saying, Rebecca has 2 sons, Yaakov and Esau, and her brother Lavan has 2 daughters, Leah and Rachel. And everybody said that it's going to be a match. The older daughter for the older son, and the younger daughter for the younger son. And she was therefore distressed that she would end up marrying her older cousin Esau. And therefore she wept. Rachel is beautiful. The Torah gives 2 descriptions, features and complexion. Features means literally the limbs, and complexion means the shine of the countenance. Now let me tell you right now what this means on a deeper level in the light of Chassidus, the difference between Leah and Rachel. Leah represents the Baal Teshuvah. The Baal Teshuvah is the one who elevates even an unholy past or an unholy encounter through Teshuvah. Hence the association with weeping, because part of Teshuvah is the regret, tears of remorse, which in the end give way to tears of joy. Isn't it fascinating that when a person is in extreme pain, there are tears, and great joy, there are also tears. Have you ever noticed sometimes you hear someone, you're not sure if they're laughing or crying? Why did God do this? Why did God make the human condition that the tears are produced for pain and for the greatest joy? And as I'm sure you've encountered this, you don't know the story. You just hear someone and you don't know, are they laughing or are they crying? That's because ultimately the greatest pain will be transformed in the greatest joy, the greatest sin into the greatest virtue, the greatest darkness into the greatest light. And nature reflects that. The human condition reflects that. The tears, the laughter, the sound. So Leah represents the power of transformation. Rachel represents the righteous, not the Baal Teshuvah, but the tzaddik, remains forever on the path of light and righteousness, never straying, not transformation of darkness into light, but forever and consistently on the path, the straight and narrow path of righteousness. And that's what's meant, by the way, to go into detail here, her description, her limbs and her aura. The limbs correspond to the mitzvahs. There are 613 mitzvahs corresponding to the 613 commandments. And that's the positive mitzvahs. And the aura is the observance of the negative commandments. Without going into detail now, but that creates an aura. The doing of the limbs, the complexion, the aura is what she didn't do because you're not supposed to. That's a higher, not doing what you shouldn't is in a way deeper than doing what you should. Because that's completely, when you're not doing something, you're holding back, that's complete devotion, deeper than doing. At any rate, that's another subject. That's the aura. And the limbs, that's the mitzvahs, the positive mitzvahs. So the 613 divide into the positive mitzvahs and the negative. Summary. Leah represents the power of Teshuvah and Rachel, righteousness, the tzaddik. Yaakov is drawn to Leah. Yaakov is naturally drawn to Rachel. My apologies. Yaakov is drawn to Rachel because his world also naturally is the world of Torah. The Torah describes him as a ish tam yoshev olam. He was a wholesome person, a dweller of tents, and that's really his natural world. Torah study and prayer. So he's drawn to the world of Rachel. That's why he loves Rachel. If you look at their children, Leah and Rachel's children, we see it's consistent. And then we'll get to Dinah in a moment. Rachel's children are Binyamin, Yosef and Binyamin. Yosef HaTzadik, Binyamin HaTzadik. They were righteous. They faced temptation and they resisted it, remained forever faithful. Higher Tzadik, the lower Tzadik. So they were consistent with their mother. They represented the holy, righteous people of the world, the innocent people of the world. Yosef maintained his innocence throughout, and so did Binyamin, throughout his life. Leah's children, they get into trouble constantly. They do children. They got into trouble, they sold Yosef. Their stories are much more interesting, in a sense, because they fall, but then they do teshuvah and they transform it all. And that's the power of the Baal Teshuvah, that's Leah. Now, here's the thing. Leah, she doesn't want to marry Esau. But the emes is, she had the power to turn Esau around. She did. But she wanted to stay, we can understand her, she wanted to stay and be attached to Yaakov and be in the world of holiness. In a sense, Leah did not fulfill her great mission, which is the power of transformation. But where does it happen? It happens through her boys and through her daughter, Dinah. Let's re-examine the story. Why is Dinah going out? She's going out to see the daughters of the land. She wants to draw them nearer. They're idolaters. She's shlichus. Dinah is doing the shlichus that Leah had the potential for, but resisted. And we certainly understand her. But the power of transformation, the power of teshuvah, to turn the Esau around. In fact, I think I have the quote here. Yeah, please look at the last quote on the page. We read in the Parshat, the power of Dinah. The whole story there with Yaakov and Esau's angel. And read the verse together, the last quote. And he arose during that night, that's Yaakov, and he took his 2 wives and his 2 maidservants and his 11 children and crossed the ford, the river of Yabok. Rashi says, but where was Dinah? Why isn't she mentioned here in all the children that he's taking now and he's preparing here for the big confrontation with Esau? Rashi says he put her into a chest. So she wasn't, being ferried across like everybody else. Why not? So that Esau should not set eyes on her. Because she was beautiful. She was the embodiment of Rachel and Leah. And what does Rashi go on to say? This is from our sages, from the Midrash. Yaakov was punished for withholding her from her brother, because had he married her, perhaps she would have caused him to improve his ways. And what happens? She falls into the hands of Shechem. The story we read, which we're going to revisit in a minute. It's very important that Rebbe says here, the perhaps is in Yaakov's view. Even he knew maybe this girl can turn my brother around. He doubted, but maybe. Then he says she could. Again, Yaakov's the world of Torah. Yaakov really cannot relate to his brother Esau. Because he is the world, he is the tzaddik. He is the tzaddik. So his world is the world of holiness and so on, of Torah. It's Leah that has that power, and Dinah that has that power. To transform even Esau, like her mother, Leah. So likewise, here the story, when Dinah is going out, she's fulfilling her shlichus, she's going out there to draw near these girls. Did the mission fail? The mission did not fail. What happened at the end? So the end was, it's true that the brothers had Shimon and Levi, they made them all circumcise themselves. This guy Shem that had violated her initially and falls in love with her, wants to marry her. And the entire male population is annihilated. But what happens to the girls? All of the girls become part of Yaakov's camp. So they all become part of this, of the people of Israel. Doesn't mean they converted. Maybe they did. But certainly they brought up in an environment of holiness. She achieved that which she wanted. And moreover, this, I know this is, what I'm going to tell you now is difficult perhaps for the contemporary sensibility to appreciate, but the circumcision of the males was their elevation. First of all, I just want to add here, they all were liable for the death penalty by halacha, because they all saw what Shem did and nobody protested. That made them party to the crime, and they were all guilty by halacha. A non-Jew then who sees such, this is a rape, and doesn't stop it, is party to it. So their death was their tikkun. In Jewish law, punishment is not punishment as in you transgressed, now suffer. All punishment is cleansing. Which is why there's no prison system, more or less, in Judaism, because it doesn't cleanse, it only harbors more resentment. Which is why they're trying to change the whole prison. It doesn't work. You put them out in the street, they do it again. Worse. Rehabilitation, not imprisonment. That exists in Torah. I'm not going to go to that now. If someone sells something or steals, he should work for the person and rehabilitate. Sometimes the crime is so great that there's got to be death. The soul's got to be removed. And then reincarnation will come back again. I'm telling you that even the capital punishment in Torah is not you sinned, now pay the price. This is your cleansing. So they were circumcised and then they were killed. That really was their elevation. Very harsh, but that's what they required. So the men got a very harsh elevation. Their souls were redeemed. The bodies perfected and the souls redeemed, circumcised and the souls redeemed. And the girls became part of Jacob's camp and the friends of Dinah, who she continued to inspire. So Dinah actually accomplished in the end. As difficult as it was, he went through a difficult process, because that's the power of teshuvah. And that's what teshuvah means. A descent and then followed by the ultimate ascent. So revisiting it in the original commentary of Rashi, like mother, like daughter, and Dinah went out, we have to understand this as a praise. Leah has the power to transform Esau. She didn't. But it's carried through in her children and in her daughter, who achieved that which we just described. Now, I want to conclude by saying that we always read the Parsha, this Parsha around Yutes Kislev. Yutes Kislev, as we all know, is the Rosh Hashanah of Chabad Chassidus. And there's so many parallels. I mean, it was the big descent. The Alter Rebbe was imprisoned, and it was negative initially, but from that came the great light. It's the power of teshuvah, the negativity itself, being imprisoned, as the Rebbe Rashab said, the fifth Rebbe. The olive, our sages say the Jewish people are compared to an olive and many other fruits. But why the olive? Like the olive produces its oil when crushed, when pressed, so too the Jewish people produce the depth of their neshama and light up the world when pressed. The Alter Rebbe's whole imprisonment, that was integral to the great light of Chassidus that followed later. The threat, literally the threat of death, and even before that, the imprisonment. Similar story here, this descent, the power of teshuvah. But I want to bring out this, that Chassidus is really the feminine. Dinah is the hero in the story here. The end, Leah is the hero. Or heroine. You don't use that word anymore. Hero. Why is Chassidus the feminine dimension? First of all, Kabbalah. It's based on Kabbalah. Kabbalah means to receive, and that's the feminine receives. The word Kabbalah in its grammatical construct is Lashon Nekeva, it's a feminine word. But much deeper than that, well, that's reflective of something much deeper. What is Chassidus? What did Chassidus come along and do? Up until Chassidus, basically, the world was the enemy. To conquer, to overcome. In broad terms, it meant the soul wanted to come down to the world, to resist the world, to overcome it, and earn a place in heaven. Before Chassidus, who was the holy person? The one who fasted, the one, the great model was, he married, because he got to get married. He had 2 children, God granted him 2 children. Discharged his obligation to have a boy and a girl, and then with his wife's consent, never lived together again with his wife. This was the big holy person. There were such great people. Starting with Moishe Rabbi, who didn't live with Zipporah. That was the model. Most people could never become, but that was the ideal. Shim ben Yochai, who sits and learns and devotes himself exclusively to Torah study. That was the goal. It used to be before the Baal Shem Tov, a pious person would fast and so on, and eat very meagerly, even when he did, and then the classic, go out to the forest and sit on a mound of bull ants, biting ants, crawl all over him and bite him. Why? The body is the enemy, to be crushed. And it's all about earning a place in the hereafter, spirituality, or living a spiritual life, a transcendent life. Along came Chassidus before Mashiach comes and said, that is stage 1. But it is ultimately, it's on the contrary, it's about godliness within nature. It's about nurturing, finding the spark within nature and revealing that, and that is a deeper investure of God than heaven. God's invested, this is a huge concept in Chassidus, invested in the body, the soul, and godliness in the physical world deeper than the highest, brightest lights of heaven. And here's where the deepest connection is to be found. So it's not about conquering the world, it's about nurturing. That's feminine, friends. The female is the nurturer. A male wins a battle by defeating the enemy, shouting louder, a bigger gun, and it's quiet. But the way the woman brings peace is by turning the enemy to an ally, transforming. That's the nurturer. There's godliness in everything. On the contrary, the more concealed, the higher the source. The huge teaching of Chassidus. That's Dinah. That's Leah. That's the power of Teshuvah. In that dark place, from there, you find and reveal God in the deepest place, the deepest way. Shlichus. Dinah is the shlucha. She's the first shlucha. She's going out there. The Rebbe says in the most modest way, that's part of the shlichus, is to bring the aura, the mystery, the modesty to the world, that the world is in awe of, and how do I be part of this? She's engaged, but at the same time removed. Tznius, in the most profound way, and out there, that's shlichus. Our Rebbe really began that, elevated the shlucha. She's in the front lines. And as we say these words, we dedicate this year and we ask you to say Tilim for the shlucha. You all know the story that is fighting for her life. Hashem grant her a speedy and complete recovery. So Chassidus is the feminine dimension of Torah, the deepest dimension, the discovery of Hashem within nature, transformation of darkness into light, turning the Esav around. In the end, Esav comes from a higher source than Yaakov. That's why he's the real firstborn. He's so high, that's why he fell so low, but he has the tremendous potential. And it takes Chassidus, which is the feminine, to nurture that, not dismiss him, not combat him, engage him, show him that he's needed and loved. And Hashem wants and needs you. That's the whole struggle today. I mentioned this the day in Shul last week. The Chabad tells me that one of the teachers, listen to this, one of the teachers has a friend who is a psychologist in a high school in Point Claire. Schools have social workers, therapists, psychologists. So the friend tells the teacher here at MTC, you know what I've discovered? I'm seeing now more and more. The greatest problem that our children, our teenagers face is, their deepest problem is the sense they're not wanted. We're just a burden. Nobody really wants us or needs us. We're here, so we're going to be negotiated with and dealt with. This is the deepest message of Chassidus, that the Eibishter wants a relationship with you, with every single person is precious and is divine within. This is the feminine. This isn't winning the war by crushing the enemy, dismissing, but by transforming the enemy into an ally, and that's true peace. Because the first way, it's only peace as long as the enemy is overwhelmed. But as soon as the enemy can re-engage, the war starts all over again. The lasting peace is when there's no enemies. He's your friend, your ally. And that's what Chassidus comes along. The world is not the enemy. And that's the story of Dinah. And that's why this Kislev always falls around this Parshat. And we should merit then, it's on the last piece, on the last quote here, from the book of Yirmiyahu, the Novi Yirmiyahu. He said Yirmiyahu means bitter because he experienced the bitterness of exile. And he is the one that says, the Keveh to save of Gever, he's talking about Mashiach's coming. He's saying, Kibor Hashem Chadash Shebar, the great novel, new revelation will be the Keveh to save of Gever, the female transcends the male. Malchus, the lowest attribute. Shabbos, the end of the week, becomes the highest, the ultimate. Okay, much more to be said, but we get a sense of this. And this is the story. We should appreciate the story of Dinah until the Rebbe revisited it with the glasses I shared with you. The whole thing was negative, like the daughter, the mother, you got punished, it's all negative. So typical. What's the Rebbe doing? Through the lens of Chassidus, turning the light on from within. The very same story, the greatest praise. It's the ultimate intent. But the appreciation of that only happens now, the end of exile, the end of Golus, the final days before Mashiach comes, and on the Erev Shabbos of history. Shabbos is the feminine day of the week. It's the Kala, it's the bride, it's the queen, not the king, not the groom. It's the queen. The the end, it's Leah, it's Dinah, that are our ultimate models, and may we merit the completion of the great mission, which is mamash happening rapidly these last days, weeks, months, and years before our eyes, as anybody with open eyes can see. So may it happen without delay. And already on this Shabbos, on this Friday, we merit the great Shabbos already. Mashiach's coming, and all that required for Shlema, the healing. We'll have the healing, and we are reunited with all our loved ones. Dafke here in this world, neshamas in gufim, souls in bodies, never to part again. The Shabbos.